A lot of us pay close attention to the clothes we wear each day. But do we pay as much attention to how we clothe ourselves on the inside? Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Wednesday, June 8th, 2022. This week I'm exploring a number of scripture readings that we commonly use in wedding services, especially those that have to do with love. But since these passages are not written about marriage, I'm asking the question, is it appropriate to use them in weddings? Or do we distort their meaning by taking them out of context? Monday, we looked at 1 Corinthians 13, Paul's famous chapter on love. Yesterday, we read a portion of 1 John 4, another well-known chapter on love. Today, we return to Paul, this time to read a passage from his letter to the Colossians. I use a portion of this reading at nearly every wedding I perform, not as the scripture lesson, but as a charge I give to the couple immediately prior to the benediction. As usual, Paul is confronting the causes of discord within one of the churches, for, as we've seen, churches in the first century were just as filled with conflict as, well, any other human organization. Immediately prior to this passage, he's been warning them not to lie to each other or to harbor things like anger and malice. Now, as he often does, Paul turns to the way members of the church ought to behave toward one another. He says, "Therefore, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other. Just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony." A couple of things come immediately to mind. First, as with 1 Corinthians and 1 John, the kind of love here is agape love, love for one another within the community of faith. It's not about marriage. And yet, as we found with both the passage from 1 Corinthians 13 and 1 John 4, these words certainly do apply to the love of spouses for one another, especially as they live into the long years of life together, when romantic love, what the Greeks called eros, takes a back seat to the need to simply care for one another over the long haul. Second, like the writer of 1 John, Paul lodges the love of disciples for one another in the love of God for us. As God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, is how he puts it. Again, this is an important point to make. For as John put it so well, we love because God first loved us. Loving our fellow disciples becomes the way we acknowledge and honor the love that God has for each one of us. Notice what Paul does next. He piles noun on top of noun to show what love means in actual action: compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, patience. These are the attitudes one has to have and the things one has to practice love successfully. And twice he uses the term clothe yourselves. I think what he's getting at is that we have to be as intentional about how we act as we are when we choose what to put on in the morning. This is important because it tells us that the love we're talking about here isn't a feeling, it's an action, an intentional way of relating to each other, a constant choice to treat each other a certain way. We become so used in our culture to thinking of love as a feeling that we don't often think of love as an intentional set of choices about what we do. So, back to my original question. Even though the actual context of the passage is not about love in marriage, is using this passage in the context of a wedding service a fair use, or is it a misuse? And once again, my answer is, it fits perfectly within the context of a service of Christian marriage. For what other do we have in Christian marriage, but a Christian couple, a pair of people who covenant together to love one another, not only in good times, but also when life is difficult. As I think nearly every couple who have been married for many years will attest, love is nurtured by the way we treat one another. When we return tomorrow, we'll read words from Jesus when he spoke to his disciples at the Last Supper. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.